Hi, everyone. Welcome to the second hour. Dado Valentic is an award-winning colorist and color scientist who has worked in over 60 feature films and many commercials. His current project, Colourlab Ai, brings precision color correction to media creators of all backgrounds. Dado, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me, guys. This is
So-
definitely an experience.
So great to have you here. So tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to Colourlab.
So I have been working as a professional colorist for mostly like 20 years, something like that, and certainly like anybody who has been working as a colorist must have asked themselves at one moment, do we really have to do everything manually, right? There must be a better way. And I have actually started automating color grading as much as I could already, in a kind of early days of color management. So I developed one of the first color management system for DaVinci Resolve before there was any color management inside DaVinci, which greatly accelerated the process. I was one of the first adopters of ACES and so on. So I always tried to kind of, streamline the process as much as possible. And that really helped because projects I worked on were, very big. We would have like, I think on Exodus, we had like something like 24 cameras or something like Game of Thrones, right? We have like 6 units. So the more you can automate, the faster is the turnaround, the better we all work, the quicker we can get dailies finished, that we can get effects applied. So it was just really always, kind of trying to see where can we save time, where can we remove certain parts of the workflow or accelerate them. So back 6 years ago, I was lucky enough that I was working with an artist from New York called Jeff Koons, who kind of had some connection with Google. I don't know exactly how that worked. That he was, I think, commissioned to do some artwork for them, and they got us to sign lots of NDAs, and they walked us into a room where they showed us what they were doing back then with computer vision, and it literally like blew my mind. I was like, this is it. This is definitely it. And so I made a relatively bold move. I sold my post-production company in London, and I moved to Los Angeles with my family. And we got a grant from Google and from NVIDIA first to do the research. And our research was a little bit different. We were basing our research on a very recent findings from neuroscientific world, where we learned a lot about human visual cortex, how it works, some of the mechanics of vision. So we were actually kind of trying to replicate that in terms of the artificial neural network. So it was very ambitious to begin with, and of course, like the early version of Colourlab 1 that we released back in like a 2020 was showing signs that things are going to go in the right direction, and everybody was really excited because there was nothing like that back then, but still, there was a lot of desire to improve. And then basically the neural networks improved, the architecture of neural networks improved. There was some really interesting things that came out. So we started to building version 2 that then came out in 2022. And this time we had a version that was working perfectly on a Mac hardware. And that was a really breakthrough for us because we always, wanted to have neural networks run locally on a device, because in color grading, you want things to happen in real time. You want things to happen now. If you have to upload something to the cloud just for, get access to neural network, it kind of kills the vibe already. So really running local devices on hardware that don't cost $25,000 and a custom build, like, racks of hard drives and, GPUs, like it was just really huge advantage to us. And then basically that network showed us that it's going to be possible to create a product which is not just for professional studios, because so far we've been developing software that was used primarily like in, feature film production, TV series, right? This was really our clients, a lot of, streamers, big studios. That's really with whom we've been working mainly. And then we realized, no, this is now possible to actually, make it, adapt it to any user, right? And that was really our goal. So in 2022, we were going to actually, like a kind of, release a version 3 that was going to work on Windows, but we decided to hold back. And we completely rebuild our neural network. Again, this is like third time around. You have to do it. But we knew what we were doing, and we just loved the new architecture of, encoders and decoders. It was really very efficient, so the tokens, very similar to what large language models are doing with words. We were just doing exactly that with color, and that helped us immensely with performance. And then this network also we built is self-supervised, which means we could just throw millions of images at it because we didn't have to tag them. The tagging is really expensive, like it's very slow. So once you don't have to tag, you can just throw a lot of data on your network. And then, I can't remember like when exactly it was and why did it happen, but it just at one moment, the neural network just started working. Like we were like, oh my God, what's happening? It's really working well, right? And that's a really interesting moment, right? When that happens, you don't quite know, because when you're like when you're developing a smaller network, you kind of have a feeling that you understand why things are behaving in a certain way. But once you kind of start training really larger network and fine-tuning and fine-tuning and training and fine-tuning, you really get surprised with the result. It somehow, there are some things, breakthroughs that you didn't necessarily train for, but somehow as a result of training, the network makes a connection somehow and starts behaving in the way you want it. Yeah, and that's exactly what we did now. In April, we released that version.
And it's fun, it's interesting. I worked in A-Life, what they were called A-Life, which is now what we think of as neural networks or the AI generative stuff. And we worked in what was called A-Life 30 years ago, and it was the same thing where you would do something and you're sitting there giving it a bunch of input, and then suddenly it just pops. Okay, I understand what I'm doing here, but it was like nothing, and then it was there, and you could see it starting to interact. Now, how do you take that and apply it to color correction?
So now that we have a network that understands perceptual, way how we perceive image, right? Because you have to understand the biggest challenge and why you haven't seen, color matching by AI done by, all the big companies like Adobe or Blackmagic or, whoever is in this space leading the whole AI game, and why you don't see that part being, already adopted by them, is because you see the most efforts that we see when people are trying to use AI for any image processing is to kind of work in this RGB world, right? Oh, I have an RGB pixel with these values, and then I have another RGB pixel, and we're going to compare them and see how they work. And that's really how the mechanic of most, matching you can see out there. What we did completely differently, we said, well, no, we're going to not compare the RGB pixels. We're going to compare the perceptual values of human vision, right? So sometimes it's strange, you could look at two images and you say like they match, but, the values of those two images are completely different, yet to us, they feel the same. So what we did first is then we said, okay, we have this network now. We know this, but in order to adapt it to a workflow is a much bigger problem. It's I think once you have a network, this is almost like a research done, and we have a prototype, but we nowhere close a product. We don't have a really product, because now you have to get professionals and creatives to adopt it into their workflow. And so what we did is we had to basically leave them to use applications that they're normally used. So they, some people are in love with Premiere, some people are in love with Final Cut, some think DaVinci is the best. And we said, okay, fine, you stay working in those applications. We build a link between these applications and our application. And also, the biggest challenge we always found with any neural network is that most creatives felt that they are a little bit like a black boxes, right? You throw something at it, boom, the result comes back. And you don't know why, right? You couldn't really understand why. And you couldn't refine it either, because the result is just some sort of fixed, So what we did is we adopted actually something which is quite genius that existed in color grading for many years, and it's called ASC CDL, American Society of Cinematographers Color Decision List. And it's wonderful, actually, piece of math, if you think about it. It basically transforms most important parts of color adjustment, right, into 9 parameters. So there's slope, offset, power, and saturation, right, for RGB channels. So that's total of 9 parameters. And it just really, that on its own is wonderful because we can train 9 parameters very quickly. We can understand. And not just that, this is exactly the controls that colorists would normally use. So they can see, this is what happened. Can correct this and that. So suddenly there was a communication between a human operator user and the network. And once that we were established that, we were like, okay, this is now deployable. This is now something that we feel, people can relate to, they can use, and they can, start, deploying in their workflow.
Can you show it to us?
Of course, would love to. So I don't think I have. Did I start sharing my screen yet? No, I don't think I have, right?
I don't think so.
Yeah, let me try. I think this was one thing I missed it. So okay. So what we got here is basically a version 3 of Colourlab, but I'm going to start my journey actually in DaVinci Resolve, simply because that's kind of how we suggest. You can import media directly into Colourlab, but you don't have to do that. You should basically say this is now some clips I got. They're all shot with log camera, right? Some underexposed, overexposed, different location, right? Sunset. Oh, definitely overexposed drone shots, right? So it's a variety, right? So then what I do is then I just come to Colourlab and I just say, hey, fetch from Resolve, right? And you don't have to do anything else. There is no like XML imports, whatever. We basically just analyze your timeline, what's on there, and we just create like an alias of your timeline, so to say, on our kind of application, on our timeline, right? So the one thing that is very specific about Colourlab is that it must be color managed. That means you cannot work unmanaged. Everything is always managed. You're always forced to color manage, and there are 4 points of image processing we do. Like there's basically 4 places. We've discovered that you can create any look you want, just by creating 4 image processing points. The first one is IDT, right? What is your camera? Okay, this is the first point. And in my case, I'm going to say that this is an Arilog C, even though it's actually Panasonic camera. They're very similar, so I'm kind of just going to select Arilog C. The next point of image processing is going to be this wheels here, which is basically your CDL, which is automated by AI. And then we have another point, which is called look design, which is your show LUT. And then we have an output point as well. And this output point then gives me ability to export to any different color spaces and so on. I can go a little bit deeper inside it. This is very fascinating, this whole kind of way of minimizing the amount of tools in order to maximize, your actually creative output. So now that I did that, I can just go and say, hey, maybe I'll start just with the balance. And I just click on balance. And balance is like trying to say, okay, what's there? Is he overexposed? No, it doesn't try to really apply any look, but it also doesn't try to kind of, just mathematically neutralize anything. It's just actually trying to kind of create some sort of, like a neutral value. So you see, basically, this shot has been corrected, this one as well, so let's say, for example, this one, has been a little darker, then this one was a little underexposed. But what we're mostly proud of is these shots. We know that, for example, sunsets are always very hard. Look, it managed to actually find a really good medium ground, but look at this shot as well. Remember how overexposed it was? It really figured out how to do that. So now what I can do, I can say, yeah, I like it. This is beautiful, but I want to add that kind of extra little bit to it. I don't want to just kind of, be neutral, and I can add some character, and I want to make it very neutral. I don't want anything too kind of strong, and I can use for that these show LUTs, right? So this is this kind of tool here that emulates analog film processing, simply because that is a very intuitive way to use these building blocks that we already developed, decades ago. The whole film, processing and photochemical, side of things is just was always fascinated to me. I think it's absolutely wonderful, what we already knew about color and look. So I didn't really ever wanted to reinvent this. And I'm going to say, hey, apply this to all. And now because we're in a kind of space where we already balanced everything, then my show light really works beautifully as well. You see, everything kind of, fits nicely. But then I can be lazy, say, I don't want to do anything anymore. Or I can go a little bit further. I can say, well, you know what, just let me help you to understand what is important for me in the shot. And we say in every shot, there is a focal point. There is something that we want audience to look at. And that's what we're going to do now with this exposure. And I'm just going to go and highlight those parts of an image that I think are important, right, that we want to look at. And then my system is going to try to, actually, this one's, I think I'm going to add a little bit to stop up. So let me just go do this. So then we're going to basically go and say, oh, this one's good, this one's good, this one's excellent, this one's good. Maybe just to correct it to see if this one's okay. Perfect. So now I have just also a little bit manually fixed it. We use for that a wonderful invention from a gentleman called Ed Lachman, EL Zones, that is actually using, scene referred, like our exposure, stops of exposure to analyze your image. And now that we're done, that was always a big thing. Okay, it's great. I graded it. But what do I do now? In every other workflow, what we have to do is we have to render clips, import clips, reeling clips. But for me, color is ephemeral. Color is not physical property. Color is just this invisible, thing that exists with an image and can be emulated in real time. Doesn't necessarily ever need to be created as another file. So what we do now is we're just going to say push to resolve. And that is then going to generate a node tree structure that I just explained of 4 nodes, but you can also customize it to be a little bit more complicated if you want to. And now all of those clips are going to appear on your timeline in real time, with all the node processing that we apply to it. You see they're all like a show lights, the CDLs, and you have then also full control over them, right?
So you're still able to make further adjustments or add other things. You're not burning anything into the video.
Exactly.
This just gets you to a starting point. For a colorist, this gets through most of the, especially as you're getting started, everything's going to kind of work together. Now you still are going to add your creative intent, you're going to add your focus, you're going to add all the other things in Resolve, but this gets a lot of the just kind of let's make sure they all get along out of the way.
Correct. And you see, this was never really difficult job for colorists, because most colorists who've been, grading for, let's say, 2 years or more, are very good in doing this balancing that I just did. But what I just showed you would take at least like a good portion of 2 hours, probably, right, for you to do it all manually, match it, compare it, and so on, right? And you've seen, I don't know how long this demo lasts, but it's a very short amount of time. Now, especially think about it if we now take longer sequences. Let's say I have an hour sequence, right? That used to take a day of grading just to balance everything, bring it back into some sort of, scenario that it's working, that is a good starting point. Now we do this like in 10 minutes, right? Because it's just really there. But the most unusual effect of all of this, which we never expected, was that actually it is possible to learn color grading now much faster, because you don't need to practice forever in left gamma gain controls and all of this. You can let the machine do this. And most people can look at an image and decide if they like it or not. Most people can do that, right? Or if they don't like an image, most people can say, well, you know what? I really maybe want to give it like some sort of, let's say, maybe a deserty look. I quite like kind of this look, right? I want my shot to look like this. And most people can decide to do that, right? And then they can decide, oh, is this a good look that I want or not? Or how about, no, maybe I want to still keep some of my blue skies. Do we want to try to do that? I can then try to do it like this. So it suddenly becomes really playful exercise instead of painful exercise, which most people, who are not colorists used to tell me, I hate color and grading because it's so hard to learn. It's so complicated. But now,
and I think that sometimes, especially for folks who aren't colorists, who do have to produce well colored work.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of us that, we're on a smaller budget. We have to work through these. We don't necessarily can't send it out for correction, but we need everything to look good, and we need everything. And we have a client that gives us they give us some kind of vision page that is like, here's all the commercials that I like, and you don't have, like, okay, well, that's going to take days for me to try to get their things to look like that, and I don't have the budget to send it out. I should, and I sometimes do, but a lot of times if you're doing something quick, I still want it to look great. And there's so many creators out there that just want their stuff to look great, and they're never going to be a colorist in the traditional sense, but they do have creative ideas about how they want to look and feel, and now. So you have these color setups. Are you able to create new ones? Is it able to analyze? Am I able to bring images in that I want it to look like and have it match those?
That's a very good question. Yeah. So here we have a little button which is called import reference, right? And then I'm just going to go, for example, I have here some sort of look packs, and and then let's say I have some shots from movies, right?
Right.
Okay, so I don't know, like let's say this shot, right? It's a kind of, since we are already in a kind of space thing, right? Mm-hmm. And I can say, all right, I'll just open this and ask me, hey, what's the color space of your of your images, right? Because we need to know that we can color manage, right? And now it's going to go and turn your image, right, into a new reference. And then you can basically go and say, okay, then please, give me match, this to be my reference. Now you say, it's good, but I really want to focus on one particular part, which is just her helmet, right? So what you can do is you can then click on region, right? And you can say, no, give me these regions. This is really what I'm looking for, right? Match only these, right? And then it's going to say, there you go. So it ignores a little bit all the sky and everything in the background if you want. You can a little bit experiment and say, no, actually, you know what? Give me some of it. I don't want my sky to be blown out. Can you please just keep some of the sky in as well, right? And it's going to try to do that for you. Now you see I got a really good match. But then you can say, well, I don't want to just copy. I want to make my image be my own, right? I want to still add something, to it. So what you do is you click on this color tune. And here, for the non-technical, or non-professional part of us, like a great tool, because what you can do is you can say, I want to have a little bit more contrast. And then I think I want the temperature to be a little bit warmer, there we go. And then I want to just bring the density down a little bit, there we go. This is now my image. Now you become my master, and I will then let everything else match to you, right? So now basically what we say, I've created now a new look based on something else, whatever client gave me as a reference. And now I can start using that as a kind of my starting point for everything else. So you are actually really, encouraged, so to say, right, to use, your own references. We believe that this is really way how to do it, that you should, find images that you like, build the looks that you want, that you think are important for you, right? And so, use that as a way to kind of, get everything to match and to work, the way you want it.
And so in this case, what you're doing, so you're gonna grab your clips, you're in Resolve, you then export this out, and this is the plugin that you have in Resolve is to send it to Colourlab, right? You're going to grab those images, send them to Colourlab.
These images are just still images. There is no link between.
Right.
There is no link between Resolve and Colourlab in terms that you can send any color settings itself. You can export an image from Resolve and use that as a reference, for example. Okay. Yeah. The flow is only one way that we can then color grade and send it to Resolve. There is, however, a little bit more kind of more interesting version where, and this is the reason because Resolve has got a very good color, engine. But what we did with Premiere is something we had to go a little bit further. With Premiere, this Lumetri engine that they use for color is kind of, past its sell-by date. This was color we used to do.
When you started talking to it, I was like, how is he going to say this nicely? So anyway.
I know that. I know that Adobe knows, and they're kind of making changes to it. I understand that Alexis von Herkman has just taken a job to improve on that. But like it's like I always compare it to like a kind of Volkswagen Golf from early 2000, and today we'd rather drive a Tesla, right? So it's just a little bit like we work a little bit better now. So what we had to do is we had to build an engine, a color engine that is going to be fully scene referred, have all the high precision, everything that we really want from professional color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just show you this. So basically this is now, I just removed all of the clips, right? So we have an extension that connects to Colourlab Ai, and this extension then basically says, hey, I am connected to your application. Says, there's a version 3 connected. So that extension is listening in the background what's happening. And then what you do, you actually do very much the same process like I did earlier, which I just say, well, do fetch from Premiere, right? So now I'm going to do the same. Then I'm going to go and just, color manage it again. And maybe, let me try this time, maybe to use this as my match, right? I'm just going to apply some look. And basically what is really interesting with the Premiere, we have a two-way communication, because once we send our metadata to Premiere, we can also read it from the timeline. So you can actually continue to work. So look, so now I go and say push to Premiere, right? And now it's going to apply on every clip a color engine plugin. You see, so there is a little plugin that just applied to it. Okay, and this plugin here is called CL Engine, right? And you can turn it on and off, right? And it uses less cycles than Lumetri Engine. It's very well optimized for real-time performance. It works, fully real-time on my laptop on multiple 4K clips, and now you have that color, right? So now if I, for example, say, well, I am gone and I re-edited it now, and, I don't know, I only have, these clips, or let's make sure I'm just turn them around so that we have more clips to look at, right? Let's say something like this, let's pretend this is now my edit, right? And I want to put this clip here, for example, right? And something like that. I'm not editing, I'm just playing. So please don't judge my editing skills right now. So, okay, so this is now my edit. Normally it looks like this with many more layers, right? So then what you do, look what's quite interesting. You can then say, all right, I've finished my edit, right? But now I wanna still fine tune it, right? My color. I don't want to just finish it with my first pass. Then you can then still fetch from Premiere, but this time everything's gonna come already with all the settings I applied previously. So I can then go and say, okay, wait, what I'm gonna do? This shot and this shot, yeah, I want them to be like a very green. Right? So like this green, please, make it vivid, very good, whatever. And then this shot and this shot, I want to be sunsets, right? So I must have somewhere sunsets, do I? Yes, I do. So here we go. And then maybe, let's go for this warm temperature, right? This is going to be now my sunset, right? And then this shot and this shot and this shot and this shot, I'll go and keep it as my, remember we imported that one shot, this one, right? I'm just going to go and make these shots look like that. So now I'm basically just playing a little bit. I can be a little bit more creative because now I have my story cut. I understand how things should be, right? And then I can go and say, push to Premiere, right? And then I'm in a kind of, pretty good position now because okay, everything is back where it needs to be, right? But I have now my looks a little bit applied in a way how I really want them, right? And everything kind of feels like, okay, I'm kind of, I graded it, right? I created a little story out of it, right? And that is a really interesting workflow that I feel like, many people will be able to benefit from. This is, I believe, what I always envisioned, Now, what's really amazing about it is this, Alex. Once I save this timeline, and any one of your team has got, and CL Engine is a free plugin. Anybody can download it. It's not licensed. It's a free color engine. And anybody who opens this timeline anywhere in the world and has got that free plugin installed is going to be able to play back in real time.
Right.
So think about the remote workflow scenario where you have 1 hour timeline, you send it to your colorist, you get it color graded just as a Premiere project, which is like what, a few kilobytes, few megabytes maximum, right?
Right.
And then you open it up and all the color is there for you. You never had to upload hours of uncompressed media. You never had to download graded material back. It's all just exchange of color metadata. And that really, I believe, is one of the biggest advantages. Let's put kind of AI on the side. Let's say I don't work with AI. I'm only interested in how to optimize my workflow, how to manage the color. This is a wonderful add-on to the workflow, I believe.
It's fantastic. Now let's jump into some of the questions, Alex.
Mm-hmm.
First question comes from Peter G. Gonzalez III in Oklahoma City. After looking up the founders, I'm wondering what's the story with why this Californian company chose to spell color incorrectly?
Incorrectly.
It's not incorrect, actually. Okay. It's a wonderful story. I have to tell you. I actually started this company in London. The color, this is where the word color comes from, right? So color. So this is where I lived for the first 20 years of kind of my professional career. And then I came to California and I was determined to change the name of the company. And then I went one day, there is a gym in Venice called, what's it called? Anyway, it's a very famous place. And who was there? Arnold Schwarzenegger, out of all people, right? And I was like, oh my God. So I was starstruck. So I had to approach him and say, hey, I just want to say hi. And then he kind of started having a conversation with me. And he says, where is your accent? I said, yes, I also went to school to Germany. So we kind of started talking this and that. And he said to me one thing, because I told him, I came here, I have a company, but and he said to me one thing, listen, let me tell you something. With his accent. Americans, they love European stuff. Swedish meatballs, Italian marmor. Do not, change anything. They love the European shit. They literally this was the word. And I was like, okay, he gave me confidence. Don't change the name. People will love it, right? So it was wonderful.
It's true. I will say that it gives, for Americans, I think we still all feel like we're not as refined as the Europeans, and so there's always this, we don't, and I think that when we see and I have a tendency to do like behavior, I will always write in the European, in the English way. Then it just like for whatever reason in my head, I've worked with so many English companies. It's good. It's great.
So you can say it's a more refined version, right? It gives it that, subliminally that message, right?
Exactly. It feels like you'd be drinking a glass of wine while working on it. Next question.
I'll say we spell it the British way in Canada as well. Next question's for me. If you only have color corrected SDR content, how difficult is the transition to HDR?
It's very easy. So let's say I want to now. This is now the grade that I created in SDR. So then I come here to the ODT, and this is what. I'm so passionate about color management that one day I would love to actually just talk to you about that, because it's amazing the stuff that we can do. So for example, I can say, well, I'm going to output to Netflix and there is a specific Netflix settings, or I want to just go for a standard HDR10. So you choose. What do you want, Alex?
HDR10.
HDR10. Excellent. So I just click on HDR10. Now look at this. Since we are working scene referred, that means all our adjustments.
Yeah. Can you explain scene referred?
Okay, so scene referred means following. There are two types of encoding that we have in general image processing. One type of encoding is such that we can reverse engineer to what actual level of light there was in front of the camera before we capture the signal. Okay, so let's say, for example, I have a pixel value of, let's say, 200, 250, 300, and I can, because it's encoded in scene referred method, I can say the light was this intensity, that photon of light that has fallen onto this photo site had this intensity in that moment. That's what we call scene referred, because it's based on actual physical light properties in front of the lens.
And that has to do with the color science of that chip and what you're measuring and your understanding of that through that, right?
Because correct, because what happened was the camera manufacturer has encoded that signal in some sort of log encoding, and has given us relationship between the light value and that log encoding. And we can then reverse engineer and say, this is the actual light. Okay, that's it. And when I'm doing color grading, and I can go to the light source instead of just doing the RGB values, right? Then I'm adjusting light in a way how the physical property of light was changing. So if I, let's say, change the brightness of an image, I'm doing it so as if I'm reducing the intensity of the light in front of the camera. I'm going for that effect, not for something, or the opposite way of working is display referred. What display referred means, like, oh, hey, I'm a pixel of 200, whatever value I am, and you need to light up a pixel on your screen with this intensity. So it's describing how bright every pixel on every screen needs to be. And there is no relationship between that value and actual capture data, because that pixel is built only to tell you how your monitor should be behaving. And it's a big difference, because the original scene referred data is this massive space. It's huge. Is sometimes even bigger than actual human visual capability. Where about display spaces are small. Your Rec. 709 is tiny in comparison to what we capture. So, we have to chisel all of this data down. So it's really inefficient for us to color grade in display, because we work with this small object effectively. We don't really have access to the details that we really captured. So what we do is we do all the color matching in a scene referred, knowing that we're going to get to higher precision.
But how do you get to scene referred if you have a Rec. 709 that you don't know what the source was?
Well, then we basically assume that we say, oh, this is 709, and there are ways how you inverse the 709 processing,
right,
and then you come with a value. But what you do is you artificially generate code values between, those values that were compressed and that were lost effectively through the original, downsizing to Rec. 709. So what we do is we would create a new log image, and we would use really mathematical, translation to understand what we think potentially would be there if that had been captured with a log camera, right? So it's not without fold, but it allows us still to work with Rec. 709 images in a very good way.
And then you're taking that Rec. 709, that small space, and extrapolating it to where the HDR would theoretically go. Yep.
Correct. And this is actually, interesting you asked it, because this is like one of the hardest things in color science is how, to actually stretch already compressed image into something that is, resembling a scene referred space. Mm. So there is a lot of, but luckily I have an advisor, in a company called Josh Pines, who has, 2 Academy Awards for his.
I know Josh. You have to say hi to Josh next time you see him. We should get Josh on the show. He's
totally. I mean, that would be probably the best, the funniest show ever. I would think.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can imagine, I'm really enjoying actually learning.
Oh, Josh is fantastic.
So he has tremendous amount of experience in that field. Who basically really helped us, how to overcome all of these little obstacles. And so basically where I was going to is I was saying, like, because I made color grading in scene referred space, an added benefit of it is that I can attach any display and I'm going to still have the same ratios, right? So now I'm in HDR10, right? All I have to do now is I have to say, hey, push it to Premiere, right? Okay. Right. And now this particular grade is going to be in HDR10. So it's like a one-click really transform. You can still go and trim it a little bit, because there are sometimes, some color decisions that you would make different once you see your image on a HDR screen.
But you're making fine adjustments. You're not doing the kind of the heavy lifting of getting these all to go kind of where you want them to do, and you're not burning it into the image. So you can still you're still dealing with the raw data.
Correct.
So so if you don't like it, you didn't give anything up.
Correct. And another benefit of this type of workflow, this type of math, is that it's compatible with Dolby Vision.
Right.
Because, when you reverse engineer Dolby Vision's trimming, right, to SDR, this is effectively how it works. Mm-hmm. Really, they all they do is they extrapolate what the actual scene refer data is and how that data would be tonally mapped to display with a higher or lower dynamic range. So if we follow the same principle, then suddenly our trims, start looking very similar to what we had started with as an SDR. So, there is not a lot of manual trimming you need to do when you do an SDR pass. And so
but yours won't. The difference with the Dolby Vision, of course, is that it's keeping those trims on a per frame basis.
It is on a per frame, but it's calculated per shot.
Right. It's only per frame so that it goes from shot to shot to shot and is able to make that shot work.
Correct.
So
but you calculate Dolby Vision metadata on per shot basis, and then it's applied to every frame. But you can override on transitions. Mm-hmm. But you can say, make every transition frame, have its own value. You can do that in certain instances. But generally, every shot has got its own metadata.
No, absolutely. Next question.
Next question's from Rian Smith in Trinidad, West Indies. Does this software work for photos, Lightroom / Capture One, etc.?
It's a good question. You see that you could do this, absolutely. There is nothing really that's stopping you to do it. However, you will have to resort to lookup tables. So you have two options. You can just, let's say, for example, this is the look that you want. This is your original image, right? And this is the look you want. You right mouse click, right? And you say, hey, export to LUT. And then you say, how big do you want this LUT to be? I say, I want a little bit more precise. It forces you to use the IDT of the actual camera that you selected, but you can also tell it, I want it to be in an sRGB color space, because, that's what I'm using in Photoshop. You export it, and this is your now like a, cube file, and you can then load this cube file in Photoshop and whatever I hope you know how to take it up from there. So, yes.
Next question.
Next question is from Douglas Carmichael. As your analog emulation technology matures, could you see many of the film holdouts finally moving over to digital acquisition?
Never. I hope never. I have to tell you one thing, This whole analog thing is not really to replace film. It's not that. It's to push cinematography beyond film. I'm not trying to emulate film. I'm trying to create a tool that is going to use the same principle of analog, but is going to allow us to create images that are never been seen before.
Yeah.
And and that was a very important lesson I learned very early on. I remember, I think it was maybe 2009 or 2010, very early. It was like early days of digital cameras, and Vittorio Storaro, famous Italian cinematographer, decided to shoot a movie with Roman Polanski on Sony F65. And it's a beast of a camera, beautiful image. I don't know why. He decided this is going to be his camera. And somehow through his buddies at the British Society of Cinematographers, I was recommended to him as a person that knows a lot about digital cameras. So I was this fantastic moment in my life where Vittorio Storaro walked into my grading room. It was just the best, right? And I was so keen to show him, like, Vittorio, I can emulate this film. Look at Agfa. I was just all showing all my kind of film emulation profiles, right? And he just raised his hand like this. And I was like, and then he said, Dado, if I want to look like film, I would shoot on film. So it's like, don't show me that stuff.
Yeah. Well, and there was some point, I think that there was a point sometime I think when the first RED cameras came out and we started doing correction, they weren't what we wanted. but you could see the trajectory when the red camera came out, and even there was, because I had a I had a Sony F950, which gave me a pretty good signal.
Oh yeah,
so that's what I was shooting with. And so I had a great signal, but it was very video. I mean, like, it was a video signal, and we had the there was a LUT that we would put on for a 10-bit, that would give us give us log, like it would kind of push the log, but we didn't. But then when the red came out, we could see, oh, this isn't it, but I can see where it's going to go. Like, the digital is going to get way bigger and way higher. And the only place that we don't see that right now yet is IMAX. But of course, when you look at the Sphere camera is shooting at very close to IMAX resolution, just with a big Sphere lens on the front.
Yeah. Now, you know what? I actually think that it's not a problem for us to emulate film so well that you can't really tell the difference between the two like that. But I honestly believe that this is not
Oh no, I'm saying that we just saw it going past it. We were, and really when we had like Yedlog, which was the thing that we were, Steve Yedlin's Yedlog was like the first thing we did to try to get more data, out of the camera. But we weren't trying to emulate film at that point. We were just trying to get more data.
Better image, right?
We were dealing with, a linear, linear images, and we were just trying to get to something that gave us a little bit more on the highlights.
Exactly. So let me just give you like a quick explanation to how this one works. So this is basically what I sampled was a dynamic profile curves of different film stocks, which are just magical. Sometimes you can't really create this by hand. So for example, let's say this is a Kodak print tonal mapper, right? And it just, you can't help it. It just looks, somehow good. Just a tonal mapping, right? You don't have to do anything else. Just tonally map using Kodak curve, and already an image looks more filmic, like more, I don't know what, this term filmic gets so misinterpreted in so many ways, but you understand what I mean. And then the concept of film development was always done based on, I shoot on a certain negative, right? Let's say on AGFA, and I print to a certain print stock, right? And that combination of those two is really the magic. It's if you like ever sat with a cinematographer back in the day when they were shooting on film, what they would should do is they would shoot 10 minutes of the same material on one negative, and then they would send it to different laboratories to print it to different stocks. They would tape it together, sit on an analog projector and watch it. And the combination of laboratory, negative, and print stock was the look, right? That was the look. And there is some magic in it. There is something, that, I could tell you what happens with an image, but how you come to that image and that process of that look creation is something we try to emulate here. Not
and it's like I'd love to play with a match, because I the behind the scenes, I think the Criterion release of Traffic, they talked about the film process that they went through to get the Mexican footage, and like they washed it and then they put it through this extra thing. And I was like, and I think for one of your demos you have to be like, this is what they did, and then what we did was click on this and then click on this and then it looked exactly the same. Next question.
Next question is from Pedro G. Gonzalez III in Oklahoma City. When looking up hardware requirements, I noticed you have Intel Max listed for best performance. What's the performance and support look like for Apple Silicon or Windows? Oh, no. The website hasn't been yet updated. Sorry for that, guys. We're actually just updating our site, because, anyway. So it works 10 times better on M Max than on Intel Max. It's no comparison.
I know this is brand new information, but the M4 just came out with a lot more of the neural engine. Does that affect you?
Absolutely. I mean, you're going to be flying, you will, listen, everything you see right now is going to be running in probably 1 year time in real time on your iPhone, potentially as well. Yeah.
Wow.
So you will be able to have a version of Colourlab inside an iPhone that's connected to your camera, you'll be able to do this kind of match like I'm doing now, right? Imagine this scenario. You prepared some references, right? And you come to a shot and it's like a really like a strong cast of sunlight, and you just type on your iPhone this, and it basically gives you this look. And it's only metadata. You're still captured in your camera log, but yet you recorded this metadata that then goes out into the editorial department. And when they open CL Engine plugin, this is the look that they see. This is really what is going to happen because what Apple is doing by, making
the screens on these are really, they're not as accurate as a color accurate monitor, but they are very accurate. Yeah. Like, when I put them up against it, it's like, it's close, it's close enough. It's way closer than anything else I've had.
And exactly. Yeah. And it has an amazingly powerful processor inside that we can, and we get access to that processor. We can actually develop for that processor. So, I really can't wait, for us just to have a little bit more bandwidth to build like a cinematographer companion app for an iPhone that will allow cinematographers to use power of AI to control their images on set, simply for preview, for metadata.
Yeah, I was going to say you could get it in, because we've done stuff where we do live keying and we do a lot of other things on set, but I could definitely see how you could be, and we've done some of this where we get a look that we want to use and we run it through some kind of LUT box or color box or FSHDR or something like that to preview those things. But this could be something that you literally could be looking at on your iPad and be changing the looks while you're there. The director could be changing the looks of like, this is a couple different options, of all of which are available later. But I get a sense of it.
Yeah, but you're not really changing the look. You're changing metadata.
Exactly.
Right? And that's important.
But you're thinking about it that way. You're thinking, like, well, this is how I'm shooting that. Yeah, it's really interesting.
And then we're adding now grain to it, halation, modulation transfer function. Because now we have processing power inside an iPhone itself, right? That we can do that. So this is really where we're heading right now. And to answer the question about Windows, yes, we are fully operational Windows, and we work better with NVIDIA hardware. Surprise, surprise. So yes, it's very fast using any card.
I did a real time. We built a real time compositor for 15 years ago or whatever, and we found that NVIDIA, the way it chunks the data, was way easier for us to work with. I think a lot of the AMD ATI stuff chunked it much smaller, and it made it really good for games, just not good for our processing.
I think that it's just NVIDIA is like a really like a conscious of making it easy for developers to accelerate the code, right? So you just load basically a specific library, and that library does the work for you, So that's really like biggest advantage of NVIDIA cards is that we actually just use their libraries and we get an amazing result. AMD relies on third party, and then a little older card doesn't quite work. So there's like a little bit like, it's a minefield, like in Windows world with all the different cards. So what we do is we say, okay, if the card is not supported, you're going to have to do it on your CPU. So then, the matching is a little slower. It takes maybe like, a few seconds instead of, just a second or whatever, but you can still operate it. You can still use it.
Next question.
Next question's from me. Is there a good online course for learning about color correction for film?
Yes, there is. There is. So it really depends how far you want to go in color grading, right? Where do you want to be? If you're considering it to do it professionally, I would recommend Color the Training. It's actually something that I've been doing for maybe like more than 10 years. Like I and it's just now it's established itself as a D Masters program, where we really take people who have very little experience and just to kind of create a desire and turn them into professionals that can, walk into any post-production facility, open timeline, and be able to, color grade an episode for Netflix. And that really helps a lot in industry, first of all, because, there is now a supply of talent who's trained to work the way how post-production works, because film schools don't really do that anymore. But if you say like, oh, listen, I only want to like, just learn, I don't care. Then we have a lot of free courses where you're just kind of going to say, okay, I want to just learn the basics of image processing. I want to understand, how the slip gamma gain works and so on. So we're just actually updating those free courses with this new version of Colourlab. So, in a probably like, beginning of June, we're going to publish those courses that are free. They're just, all it's required is your willingness to complete them. And we'll give you software as well and everything. So I really think that color grading is super fun, and it's not really that difficult anymore to learn. And I really would love to encourage everybody really to get familiar with it, even if you want to make your log look nice, or,
I always think about with anything, when I see something in a basic educational video or a YouTube or something, when I walk up to a restaurant and they hand drew they're like, we're not opened or whatever, I always feel like, or something that's been up there for a long time, not like I just did this for lunch, but something's been up there for a long time. They did it with bad handwriting on there. I'm like, well, we're still not there where everyone knows how to do this because that was a pretty easy thing to look nice. And in the same sense that when you look at YouTube videos and everything else, you realize that, when we still see stuff that looks pretty rough, we're not there yet. Like where it's accessible and that people are really paying attention to it.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think DaVinci Resolve did a tremendous job in democratizing color grading. I mean, it brought really color grading to millions. But it's hard. It's hard. It takes a very long time to learn that application. And I know it because I teach it. I have been teaching DaVinci Resolve since version 8, right? right. And it's really hard, and it's getting more and more, right? It's not like, oh, the application is getting simpler. No, it's getting more complicated, right?
It's so
and that's daunting, for many people. They're like, do I really have time in my life, to dedicate now months and hours to learn something new?
Yeah. Next question.
Next question is from Rian Smith in Trinidad, West Indies. Any ideas how to make a mobile version, and plugins to most mobile apps have these features? I'll take my 2% shares for the good idea.
But I didn't understand the idea. Tell me again. What is
I think he just wants to know, like, are you thinking about making it? It sounds like you're definitely talking to mobile. You're thinking about making mobile versions of what you're doing right now.
First we're going to make a plugin version, so that you don't have to leave Premiere or DaVinci. You can have it as a plugin, a little bit simpler, because plugins can analyze only one shot, right? What's advantage of Colourlab is that you can analyze sequences, right? So that's the first step, and then the next step is we would love to partner with software that's already camera, right? So, camera software. We don't want to reinvent that, right?
Right.
So that is, we're just looking for appropriate home, for that, so that we don't have to build everything ourselves.
Yeah.
But I mean, like the fantastic news is that, once you have your neural network run on any, Apple hardware, they made it incredibly easy, really, to move it onto a mobile platform. We just have to reduce the size of our neural network, right? So you will have a little bit less precision, but it's actually, it's fascinating, how beautifully Apple has allowed us to run on-device AI. You have to. This is very, very important. I think this is the next trend.
And Apple's focused on it more than anybody else.
I think they're so smart about it. This is such a right decision to do, especially with video, right? Mm-hmm. If I have to upload my video through some 5G to get some neural network in the cloud to do the processing for me to, forget about it. I will never do that. But if I have a device that can run this neural network, first, I'm not incurring any data transfer time. I'm not incurring cost. I don't have to run like a massive image processing cloud, AWS bills of $100,000 a month, right? Yeah. Just to kind of offer my client a service of doing some color matching in a cloud. You have your own device. That's what you paid $1,000 for. You might as well, use it, right? Yeah. and I'm going like, okay, this is the future, and the time, is complete. I mean, you can't compare it. It takes milliseconds on a device, and it takes minutes, to do something in a cloud. So, Apple is super smart by pushing for the on-device AI. This is what we're going to be doing,
Yeah, absolutely. Last question for the hour.
All right, and the last question comes from Ronny Hofsø in Tromsø, Norway. Will this tool handle changes over time in a single clip? Like if someone forgot to lock off white balance and used auto white balance, or in a time lapse during sunset?
Yeah, so it can do some of that already. So let me show you here. So for example, this could be an example of the shot. You see, you see how this shot is kind of, moving, right? And it has this kind of pan, right? So what we do is we say, okay, you turn this feature, which is not frame, but shot mode, right? And then what we do is we analyze the whole, clip. And then we tell you, okay, we think this is the best match. This is the brightest frame, right? And this is the darkest frame of the shot. And then that helps us find the medium value, what we think it's the best value for both. You can't make any keyframes yet, right? You can't do that yet. So you would have to manually keyframe, by splitting clip into parts yourself. But this is something that we will do. We will be able to have similar method of frame-based metadata like Dolby does, where we're going to time code the metadata and allow you to create progression over time. So that will be happening. Not now, but pro version, yes.
Dado, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. It was great.
Really, really great to have you here.
Thank you as well.
Well, we're going to bring you back to talk more about color.
Excellent. Anytime. That's my favorite subject.
Excellent. And thanks so much to the panelists for the first hour, and to Alexander, who is doing the Q&A here for the second hour. And thanks to the incredible team on the back end that makes this happen, that manages these shows, that manages the back end, that greets people when they come in, that makes sure that the software is running, makes sure that the hardware is running. It's not a average Zoom meeting. So thank you so much for all of your work. And thanks to the incredible producers that are watching this show every single day, asking all these questions. It's a really short show without your help. So we really appreciate it. Today we traveled. If we had to wander around answering all these questions in the we would have to travel 62,000 miles today. That's 99,000 kilometers, and that is 489 million bananas for scale. All right, let's go ahead and jump into After Hours.
I love it. Bananas scale. I love it.
There's a lot of what is a banana? The length of the banana becomes complicated. Is it is it a regular Chiquita banana, or is it a plantain? There's been a lot of arguments about these kinds of things, and then there's a concern that Chiquita bananas, they're under a lot of stress from a fungus. And they may go away, which may change our entire management system, so we may be, it's just, the numbers will all get,
I like it.
All right. Thank you so much.
No, thank you for having us as well. Have a great, I hope this was okay.
It was fantastic.
Excellent.
Fantastic.
Have a great day.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right,
Cheers.
see ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.